Ta-da!
Here we
Live on the Metal
go.
Voice. Here we go. Neil
Hey,
Turbin.
Hey, man.
our,
What's up,
our
guys?
West Coast
Hey,
correspondent for the
Alan,
Metal
Jimmy.
Boys.
Great to see
You
you
know,
guys.
yep,
Yeah,
always
great to
great to
have
see
you.
you. This is different. It's a different style of show today. You're not as a guest. You're not as a commentator. You're not as a journalist. Actually, you are as a guest. I should
Yeah, that's what I was wondering where
You
you're
are a
going with that.
guest. Oops.
We'll
Neil
find out what's
Turbin.
happening, what's coming up in Neil Turbin's world. But I
Yep.
got to say, Neil, look at this here. Hit Parader magazine. Look at that, Aussie. May you
Oh,
rest
yeah.
in
Hey,
peace.
Nice cover.
February 84, and then I flip in the back,
there it is.
and who's there? Who do I see?
Turbine.
That's the first exposure I had to Anthrax. There's Neil over here. Like there we go, right
I don't
there.
remember seeing that issue. I know I saw a different one. I saw
Strange
it.
enough,
Bound on stage. There we
Alan,
go.
I have the same issue in my closet, and yes, I remember that.
Look,
It was
it was
the East
Los
Coast versus the
Angeles.
West Coast.
Los Angeles versus New York. That's what it was.
I probably saw it, but I guess it's in the archive somewhere.
Whatever happened to Americade and Cities from New York? They kind of disappeared, those guys. Greg D'Angelo. There we go. He went to join Cities after Anthrax, it looks like.
White
There,
Lion.
there was a great guitar player in the band Cities. His name was Steve, and I know he passed away, unfortunately, but he was very reminiscent of Randy Rhoads, and not just in his playing to a certain point, but very competent player. Not exactly like Randy, not quite, but certainly very. He gave you that vibe because he was a blonde hair, long blonde hair. He had the stage presence like that, and to a point, and different guitar player, but there was that vibe. There was certain guitar players, certain musicians give you a certain influence or a vibe, feeling. And that was one of the great things about Cities. And then a really good guy, Sal Italiano, was in that band as well.
Sal Italiano, Anvil.
Great guy.
Anvil fame. But
Hey, so-
before we begin, Alan, before
Yeah.
we begin, I want to give,
Yeah.
I want to say what's going on here, the dates, okay?
Yeah, let's get the dates. That's exactly where I was
Okay.
going.
Let's just start right now, okay? October 10th, Ottawa. October 11th, Montreal. October 12th in Toronto. Neil is coming back to Canada to play Fistful of Metal after 31 years. He's been to Canada, but it's now time to play Fistful of Metal after 31 years. He played Montreal in 1984 at the Spectrum. He's coming back to play this, plus a little bit of that, and some other stuff. I'm going to tell everybody who the touring band is. It's Drowning in Blood is your support band.
Correct.
Machine Messiah will be on all the shows, all three
Support
shows.
band, yes.
In Ottawa, one of the opening bands will be Infrared. In Montreal, it'll be Mutank, not Mutant, Mute Tank. And
Infrared and
Zero Tolerance and Zypher. I think it's pronounced that way.
Zero Tolerance and Zypher
Will be also
Cypher,
the
I'm
opening
sorry.
bands right there. So there's also a meet and greet. You get to meet Neil Turbin. I'm so excited. You get to meet Neil Turbin. You get to take a picture of him. Bring your own camera. You get a T-shirt. You get a free ticket. I don't know. High five Neil or something, and maybe a poster or something. So
They've got some things planned, and I mean, I haven't played in Canada for
31 years.
I haven't played these songs
Yes.
in Canada, certainly for decades. And, I've been to Canada, but that's another story. We won't talk about the last episode, but, I was there, and it was great to see you guys in Montreal, and, certainly played extensively in Canada 10 years ago, but never had the opportunity to, of course, come back with Fistful of Metal, Armed and Dangerous, Spreading the Disease songs that I, of course, was part of. And, officially my tour is Armed and Dangerous 40, Armed 40th, because that is the anniversary of Armed and Dangerous. So we're 40 years out from Armed and Dangerous. I don't know, last year and towards the end of the previous year, I was doing support of Fistful 40, which was the 40th anniversary of Fistful of Metal. And of course, I was supposed to play in Canada at the Piranha Pit Fest, as you're very well aware.
Yeah.
And maybe the audience is not aware, but but that was certainly a show that we were going to play and ready to do it. And I know that Rob Dukes was also on that bill, right? He was, the singer from Exodus. At the time, he wasn't in Exodus. And, so we were looking forward. In fact, Rob had called me, we were talking, and it's like, yeah, we can think about possibly doing some other shows. And, of course, he was fortunate to get the call from Exodus. He's back in the lineup. So, I mean, that's fantastic. But great guy, by the way, Rob Dukes. And, we hit it off, and it was great to have a chance to chat with him on the phone. And unfortunately, what happened, I believe, is there was a number of concerts that weren't, evident around the time that this Piranha Pit Fest was going to take place in Montreal. Then all of a sudden you had, the big bands coming in, and, when you have these large, touring acts coming in, it's like, where are people going to spend their money? They're going to go to see Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and, a big festival or things like that. And then, then it's, all the turkey's gone, and then it's all the...
That's right, all the bones.
All
the bones
the
are
trimmings,
left.
all the good trimmings are gone. Then you get like, corn or,
Mashed potatoes.
You don't even get yams, man. You get
But Neil, the runway is clear in October. The runway is clear.
Very good. Hey,
get some string beans.
8th of June, 1984, I know where I was. I was buying this album. And I just realized today, I bought this album, and then I never bought another Anthrax album until about Worship Music. So
You're saving
maybe
up.
Maybe that was the Neil Turbin influence. I don't know.
I didn't know that about you, Alan. I didn't know. Well, Anthrax, they've been a successful artist. They've had different, revisions of the band. And, what's interesting is that I think there's different things about them, different sounds, really. It's a different, the different versions really make a different sound, I mean, I think members of a band have an impact on the sound of a band, certainly. And even changing the drummer, that changes something. Changing the singer, that certainly changes the sound. I remember when Riot, they had Guy Speranza, and they went from Fire Down Under to Restless Breed. And I mean, at first it was like kind of off-putting, like, what is this? It's like soulful rock vocals.
He wasn't a New Yorker. That's
I love Rhett Forrester. I was friends with Rhett. Rhett and I, we hung out, and eventually, when he first came out, I mean, there was certainly a buzz, and they certainly had, Fire Down Under, which was a big buzz for Riot, but it was kind of a shocker. And to me, I don't know, maybe it's just me that, I get attached to a singer of a band or a sound. And I really loved Paul Di'Anno with Iron Maiden. I mean, I love Bruce Dickinson, and he's an amazing singer, certainly, big range and power and, virtuoso and, great abilities and songwriting and everything.
Neil, but I want to add this. Before I forget, I want to add this.
Yeah, Paul Di'Anno.
I'm like Alan, and I've said this many times before. Fistful of Metal came out in '84. I got Fistful of Metal. I then realized, I guess I came back on vacation in the summer or after summer, and I realized, what, Neil's not in the band anymore? And then I tried to buy this album. I bought this album. It's actually another version of this album I bought. And I go, it's not the same band. People just don't get it. And it's to your point, Neil, you get attached. I go, how do you go from this to this? And I'm not knocking Joey. Don't get me wrong. I like the Joey songs too. But this will always be my favorite Anthrax album. I know a lot of people have said that. And a lot of people in the industry have said that. I know Sebastian Bach said how much he loves this album. He couldn't believe it was you. He couldn't believe it was you.
Sebastian was cool.
I don't know, Alan, did you see the interview? Neil's interviewing Sebastian Bach, and he's talking, and he goes, hey, wait a second. You're Neil Turbin? He goes, yeah. From Fistful of Metal, Neil Turbin. Yeah. I love that album, man. I love that album. Look, Show No Mercy, Slayer, Metallica, Kill 'Em All, and of course, Megadeth, Killing Is My Business. But this is part of the big four, man. This is the history of thrash.
Hey, is it true, Neil? When that came out, it was called speed metal at that time, right? And thrash didn't exist. until maybe Metal Thrashing Mad influenced that movement that Kerrang used to describe that type of music.
Well, I think what you have in those days, Alan and Jimmy, is you have, people like yourself discussing, kind of the metal community and the metalheads and the fans and the journalists, which, the journalists were really, you had these zines, these fanzines, these underground, everything was in print. There was no internet or anything that resembled internet. So you had these magazines, and then you had these almost magazines that looked like they were printed on, someone's stock paper from the back office of their school or their job or wherever, like where and they put out a magazine, and some of them had and the people that had the passion for it, that's really where this whole metal community came from. It's such a great history, because there was such a great spirit and just the enthusiasm and the love, the passion, just like Jimmy was talking about his love for getting attached to something. I mean, we're all like that as humans. We all, that's why cover songs, that's why cover bands are successful, because people are used to what's familiar. They like what's convenient and what's easy, and learning new music, hearing new music, trying to adapt to new music. Here's an example, Alan. I'll give you this one. You're a Black Sabbath fan, right?
Yeah.
So Black Sabbath albums, like you're familiar with them?
Sure, yeah, I got them all.
Okay, so name 3 Black Sabbath songs that are at the top of your head.
Well, Paranoid, St. Vitus's Dance, and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, let's say.
Well, that's not too hard, right? Because you're a fan. You love Sabbath. I love Sabbath. I can name easy to name 3 Sabbath songs. Depends which era you want to talk about. Tony,
I thought he was going to go with Paranoid, Neil, just for the record. I thought he was going to go with Paranoid.
Headless Cross. Dio.
But he goes with St. Vita's Dad.
Dio, Heaven and Hell. What? Ozzy. There's so many. The Wizard, War Pigs. I mean, Paranoid. There's so many great songs. So
Air Dance.
How about, and there's Glenn Hughes era.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
and then
there's
there's Ian Gillan era. I mean, there's a lot more. So, but I know those songs. I could name songs from those eras. However, Zero the Hero, right?
What you're going to be.
Digital Bitch.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. And then there's a later, well, anyway. So the point being, The End. Did you guys review that album?
It was 13. It was 13.
Yeah, 13.
Not
Okay.
at the end, yeah.
We did.
That was a
We
tour,
did.
right? The End was a tour.
Yeah, it was a tour.
So, Alan, can you name one song off of 13? Besides
Good
13.
Good point.
Jimmy?
This is God is
I think
Dead.
wasn't there
God
a
is
song
Dead.
called 13 on 13?
Yeah.
That's a good one, Jimmy. That's a good, yeah. We'll give you the
There's
buy
one
on that
called
one. But
God is Dead, right?
my point is this. Everybody loves Sabbath, but how many actually can name a song or are listening to that album regularly? I mean, the band has evolved, they've changed, they've come full circle.
Rick Rubin.
Just played the last show, right? Back to the beginning. So the issue is that people, they're comfortable with War Pigs. I mean, they want to hear Paranoid. They want to hear Sabotage. They want to hear NIB, Fairies Wear Boots. I don't know. It's not just Sabbath. It's Iron Maiden too, right? It's Judas Priest too. They want to hear Living After Midnight. They want to hear 2 Minutes to Midnight.
For a second there, Neil, I thought we were going into a trivia show. I just thought we were Neil Turbin's trivia.
It's a trivia show. So here's the point. Like a band that tries to introduce new music, they care about the old music. And it's like, you're not selling a band that you were in, 100,000 years ago. Someone that was in a band that's now in a different band, or their own, or, as their own artist, a solo artist, or their own, they have other music. That's a hard sell to people because you really have to have the business behind you, and you really have to have, a lot of things pointing in your direction. And even for someone like Dee Snider, for example, what is he playing? New music, or is he playing, we're not going to take it? You know what I mean? It's the same thing for most artists. I mean, they want to hear Foreigner, right? Same thing. The new music, do they want to hear the new music with Kelly, or do they want to hear the old music with Lou?
I want to hear Death from Above. That's what I want to hear,
Yeah.
Neil.
Yeah, well, the good news is we are re-recording still because it's a process, but we're doing that with all of the songs that I was part of, that I've written or sang on or what have you, that are on releases. So those are being recorded. So there will be an album, and that is something that's going to happen. People want to press you with deadlines and timelines and all that. Well, it's going to get done, and while we're still alive, and that's that, So ask questions, and that's my answer. So
Metal Thrashing Mad, Neil, is that real? Is it a song about the driving around your car, listening to Priest, like you said, Raven? Is that the spirit of that song? Is what that song is about?
Well, that's a fair question, Alan. I think for me, there's a couple of considerations to kind of take into to assimilate. One of them would be that when we were writing songs with Anthrax, when we were writing for Anthrax, we were in the band, we were writing the music. It wasn't really a team effort in the sense of, hey, guys, let's write a song together. No, it wasn't like that. It's like, here's a riff. Here's a tape. Here's a riff. Figure it out. In other words, it wasn't a collaboration in that respect. It was kind of like, I have to, here's a jacket and try to make it fit your body. It's a size 38 and you're a size 44. Try to make it fit. Well, okay, we got to take it to the tailor. We got to, that's what it is. So there's that aspect of it that made it challenging. So I really had to lock myself in the room and really work with these songs to make it work. Also the tuning, the keys that the songs were in, the band was young and didn't really have the kind of, foresight to maybe understand, putting things in specific keys. It's like, we just want to be like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. That's what they wanted to do, and me, I, had experience coming into Anthrax. I had other bands that I was in and played places. So, I wrote songs. So I was coming from a perspective of, let's write a great song. And I think what happened with Anthrax when I first joined is, here's this material that I'm up against and try to make it sound mature or good. And it sounded childish, the original demos and stuff. Some of it was, we're not talking about later demos. We're talking about the first demo. It was kind of like, okay, this is a little bit, over the top, guitar solos, like it was showboating, and the vocals were really underrepresented. It was not in any kind of a range. It was just low singing because, Scott's brother, was 14 years old, and I don't know if he knew what he was doing, but he just, hey, we need a singer. You're the guy. So, okay. So he was singing, and it was just, he's a pretty darn good drummer, but when it comes to what he did on that, when I first heard it, was like, okay, well, this won't be hard to do because it just sounded like, someone was not really singing, they were just kind of going through the motions. So I had to adapt those songs to make them something more, and also fit the way that I sing and how my approach was. So at the time, it wasn't like, hey, we're going to be speed metal, we're going to be a thrash metal band. It was kind of like, I came from a place of heavy metal, of course, and I came from a place of punk rock, as well as rock, classic rock, hard rock. I had a lot of influences, and being from New York, certainly Kiss and the Ramones and Manowar and Riot was a big influence. Riot, Saxon, and Accept for me were big metal influences. Loudness, these were very big metal influences that had albums. Of course, we were around Metallica, playing many shows with them and hanging around with them. We had the same manager, we had the same record label, so we were engaged. They stayed in our rehearsal studio, so they were there. I was there, every day.
You know what? It's interesting. We've talked about this offline many times. A lot of people, or you seem to sort of not, the narrative is never Neil was there, right? And you were there, right? Metallica was there. Johnny Z was
Greg
there.
Walls was there a lot.
Greg Walls was there. Yeah. You guys were there.
Greg D'Angelo stopped in sometimes.
James Hetfield, you held him on your arm, your arms as he was playing
guitar. It was on New Year's, 1983.
you were around when Dave Mustaine
84.
was shipped off. You were there in that time period.
And Dave Mustaine had my vest, my leather jacket that had the sleeves cut off.
Never give it back. Never give it back.
Yeah, he wore that at the Paramount show in Staten Island.
A lot of people saying that Dave Mustaine, he was, everybody drank back then, right? I mean, was he overdoing it, or was that just exaggerated? What do you remember?
When you say overdoing it, what do you?
I'm just saying, did he have a few too many beers, or was he just it just didn't work out with him in the band? I don't they said he drank too much, or I don't know.
I don't think it's really fair to make a blanket statement, about Dave in those times. I think really, I think what you have is you have a few of the guys, they were kind of headstrong, just like an Anthrax, and that's not necessarily an ego problem. It's being headstrong is like being very enthusiastic as well, or very like you have an idea and you're trying to get that idea across. But yeah, that the ego can certainly overwhelm everything, and that is certainly a factor that I'm not denying or pushing away to say in the case of certain people.
Yeah,
but,
no, I get it. You don't want to say anything bad. Yeah, I get it.
But I think that there's a certain element of what you think should, what you think the metal voice should be, what you think, what kind of people should be interviewed, do you want to do pop artists? I mean, that's not, you have an idea of where you want to go with it. So I think that's kind of how it is in a band. You have an idea of where you want to go with it. I wasn't thinking, Dave Mustaine had an idea of where he wanted to go. And I think there was a number of issues. The band was living out of a suitcase. They're on the road. They're living in a rehearsal studio that didn't have a shower. They were living in a, it's like a industrial building. They don't have a refrigerator, or maybe they eventually ended up with a small one for a beer-sized one. They, you know what I mean? It's like they had a toaster. I mean, a toaster oven to make a can of beans, that sort of thing. It wasn't really, whatever we could scrounge up for them. So it wasn't like money was great at that time. So they didn't have, like, they couldn't go and buy a fancy refrigerator and a fancy, appliances and, redecorate and have like a bedroom. I mean, it was like sleep on the floor, put some blankets down, sleeping bag. So it was rough, and they, God bless them. I mean, they championed through, and here they are. Metallica is one of the hugest things in music on the planet. So good for them. I mean, they really came through, but on the other side, but with Dave Mustaine, I mean, he came through as well, but I would say that, I think there was substance, I think could he afford substances then? Probably not. But yeah, it was, people can be pretty obnoxious alcoholics on Coors Light. I've met people that they're not
ginger ale. I'm really crazy on ginger ale, I tell you.
Yeah, they're drinking like 140 beers, and like Andre the Giant, and they're just drinking Coors Light, but it's an addiction. It's a personality issue. It's they couldn't look at a bag of M&Ms and not eat the whole thing. There wouldn't be one left over. They couldn't leave a cigarette. It would be all smoke. They couldn't leave, you couldn't have a 25-pound box of chocolates. They'd eat every one of them. I mean, it's the same thing with alcohol. So I think what you're dealing with is that element. And so that, and when you have no money and you're living in a industrial building and all that, and you're trying to, hope that it goes somewhere, and, you're struggling and you're biting the bullet and you're trying to make it happen. And okay, Johnny Z and Marsha Z are booking shows for us here. They got shows for us there. So that's great. Nice to get accolades. People love Metallica. But then you go back home, and what's home? A rehearsal studio that you're living in with broken drum chips from the drumsticks all over the place. You get splinters in your feet. You're walking in your socks in the room. And I mean, that's the reality that Metallica had to go through, and more. And, and you get sick because maybe it's not heated or cold at night. New York could be pretty cold in the winter. So like Montreal, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of hardship that, that's the kind of stuff they had to go through. So yeah, I would say that, yeah, I guess people can be kind of crabby. They won't always be on their best behavior or all happy all the time. But I think for Dave, everyone wanted to get a beer or get a drink. We all did. Who didn't want to have a beer at 20 years old or 19 or 20 or 21, whatever age everyone was at. So yeah, we all wanted to go to the party. We all wanted to go to a show or be part of the rock and roll. But I think that there was those kind of pressures that the outside world doesn't really think about. You're just thinking about, oh, well, you were there, and yeah, but we interacted, and I was friendly with Dave, and I lent him. I wasn't going to lend him my stage clothes, but he asked, and he kept insisting, and I said no. I said, I'll give it back, I promise. It's like, okay, one of those, I promise, and you trust them, and sure enough, it wasn't going to happen. So I had to
It's like when Alan lends me his books and he says, "Don't fold the pages," and I fold the pages.
Yeah, and it's that kind of thing. So I just had
Jim, why'd you fold the pages?
First, I had to go.
You can't use a bookmark. But I get to what you're saying. Hardship sometimes brings out, a little tension within people, right?
Yeah, he disappeared after that show. Like, he was gone.
He gone.
So I don't know where he was, and I don't know if that was an intended thing, but I eventually found him, and I eventually,
Right.
had to, have a heart-to-heart about getting my stuff back. So, but I got it back, and, it was a great show for Metallica, and it was cool to be there. It was,
Neil, I'm just gonna, because I just don't want to get too off track.
Yeah, no worries.
A lot of people are texting here, so I don't want to leave them out there. A lot of fans.
If they're texting, go grab some questions, man.
Like Jim Harrison saying, John Bush, he's going out there, he's going to be playing some Anthrax era, because Anthrax doesn't play his era, and that's rightfully so. Joey Belladonna's got a lot of his songs to play. John Bush is going out, he's going to test the waters with Category 7. He's going to play some Anthrax era John Bush, which everybody's waiting for. You, my friend, are coming playing the Turbin set or the Fistful of Metal era, plus the other songs from the other albums. What do you think about John Bush? What do you think about John Bush going out there and playing? Is there a void that needs to be filled? What do you think about John Bush going out there playing Anthrax? And that's because Jim Harrison asked that question 3 times, and I just want to make sure his question gets
3 times.
answered.
Okay. Well, let me address it. So, number one, I think John Bush, is just a great, fantastic human. Just a great person. Every time, I've interviewed John, and sometimes with you, Jimmy.
Yep.
Sometimes not with you and Alan. But I've interviewed John a couple of times on my own. I've interviewed him with you, and also every time John has always been, very, very warm, very kind, very, genuine, very accommodating. I could tell you about other artists that we really had to work to get an interview, right? And some of them were quite it's a story within a story. So with John, he's always been just a warm, good person, just really a delight to work with in any capacity. Just very, very real people, and as a singer, fantastic singer, a unique singer. He sounds like John Bush, and I think that's very important when it comes to being in the biz, right? To have your own sound. So I think John is great with Armored Saint, and as far as the Anthrax material, I think he does a really solid job on the songs that he does. I think their sound was a different kind of sound than mine, from what I did. I think, you're talking about after I left the band, people think that I was replaced by Joey, but that's not the case. After me came Matt Fallon from Skid Row. So he was with the band in 1984. So I think Joey, I'm not the historian here, but I think Joey joined the band through Carl Kennedy, and he joined the band after they were in the studio in 1985. Or maybe they were talking about it in 84, but I guess things didn't work out with Matt Fallon, apparently. So, but that's who was in the band, Matt Fallon. But
we're going off the John Bush. Hold on.
Yeah, we're getting to it. So what we're talking about is that's another era. They're trying to find their way. They were trying to figure out, well, what do we do? Anthrax and I, we parted ways. That was it. So at that point, they had Matt Fallon, and that was their singer. And whatever he did, we haven't heard demos, but that's the direction that they were going in. And then Joey joined after Matt Fallon because I guess things weren't working out back at the farm. as the Thin Lizzy song goes. So,
Alan's a big fan.
yeah. And so at that point, they had maybe another direction that was occurring, I guess, at that point. But they already had songs recorded, I think. I think they had some songs that were already cooking, it was on the stove already. So and I think that's what Armed and
Gung Ho.
No, that was before that. That was the Armed and Dangerous album.
EP. There was an EP out.
Yeah,
Armed and Dangerous.
EP.
So basically, what Armed and Dangerous was all of my songs except for one song. All the songs that I either wrote, sang on, or did both, or had a part in. I mean, obviously, I didn't write an instrumental, right? But I was part of that era of those songs. So what Joey did is he did God Save the Queen. And I don't know how many people want to hear Anthrax playing that. I don't know. Do they even ever play that song? So, but that's what was on Armed and Dangerous. And then it was my song, Armed and Dangerous, which I wrote. I copyright my lyrics and my melodies for that because I left the band, and that's what I did. And I did that for all of my songs that were in that time frame. Lo and behold, after that, they changed a couple of words, and then they gave Joey credit like he was a songwriter. I don't know how many Anthrax songs Joey's written, but do you know what songs is Joey?
It's very difficult to tell, but you're saying that on Armed and Dangerous,
Armed and Dangerous. I mean, I know he writes songs and he has his own band and stuff, so there's no doubt he can write. But does he write anything with Anthrax? I mean, in other words, what happened after Spreading the Disease? What about these other albums? I mean, I'm not a big follower of what Anthrax does, but maybe you guys know because you guys interview him. So I mean, is there songs that Joey's written with Anthrax? Because that would tell us that, hey,
you know why? Because the albums usually say songs written by Anthrax, so it's kind of like a blank statement. So you don't know.
So you don't know if like the janitor came in and wrote some lyrics.
With that. Look, bottom line is you co-wrote Armed and Dangerous, right? On the Armed and Dangerous EP and on Spreading the Disease, right? And a few words were changed around. Is that correct?
Yeah, they changed a few intro words. They didn't change the chorus.
And when you play in Canada, you're going to be playing all of this, Gung Ho, Armed and Dangerous, off of Spreading Disease and Armed and Dangerous, right? Plus your solo material.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't answer Alan's first question about Metal Thrashing Mad. So I just
wait a second, you didn't answer the John Bush question. Wait a second.
I know, but I'm going to.
Okay, but what?
So I mean, I have a different checklist. So on Metal Thrashing Mad, it was the spirit of the time. 1984, 1983 is when it was written. It was that element of that enthusiasm, and it was also some of the influences I had. And I have to tell you this, Alan. One of the key points of Metal Thrashing Mad was, some kind of a catchphrase, some kind of a thing that would, get people, you thought about other bands at that point. And you had Saxon, Street Fighting Gang, it flows, it's
Denim and Leather, Denim and Leather.
A 3-word kind of a sequence, right? You had
that was 1 p.m.
You had Accept, Flash Rockin' Man. Street Fighting Gang, Flash Rockin' Man. You had
Balls to the Wall.
Steel. You had Freeway Mad. You had. So what did I come up with? Metal, thrashing, mad. Madness. So I put together. I mean, this wasn't Anthrax writing this. This was Neil writing this. They had riffs. They said, "Here's a tape of a riff. Oh, we'll change this riff." But I didn't, it was so loud in rehearsal, I couldn't get them to repeat a chorus. I couldn't get them to, hey, can we maybe go in this direction? Maybe we should go up instead of down. I can go hit a high note here. It wasn't like that. It was like a lot of tug of war to try to get it's like instead of it being a collaborative process, it was like a tug of war, because people that had egos and were bullies wanted to push their agenda their way. It's like, oh, it's like fighting for real estate. No, that's my walkway behind the house. No, you can't have that fence. No, you can't put a wall there. You can't put a driveway there. You know, it was that kind of thing where they're marking their territory. It was like, you know, cats peeing. You know, cats are peeing constantly. Why? Because they're marking their territory. That's what's going on. So I'm just trying to write the damn song. I got cats peeing, you know, like
everywhere.
Territory. So
Okay.
To me, that's not what songwriting is. I write songs let's make the song as good as it can be. To answer Jimmy's question, so we segue to that. Jimmy, you asked, I
don't remember what I asked.
You asked me what am I playing those songs from those albums. Well,
yes.
The difference is I'm playing it the way that I play it, not the way Anthrax plays it.
Okay.
I don't play songs that are, you know, songs that you can go to the, you know, it's like the movie break, you know, you go get a piss and a popcorn, you know, like I get a beer. I can't have that I don't want that in the song, and certainly not a song tempo that it's dragging. There's a lot of song tempos. There's a lot of things that are, you know, a result of how young the band was, or how inexperienced the songwriters or as artists. I mean, you evolve. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you do things differently now versus what you did when you're 40 years old? I mean, there's some things that you could kick yourself and say, why did I do it that way? I mean, one of the things would be, why did we tune to A440? Do you know that in 1932, they changed not 1932. I think it was 1920 or sometime around then. You know, they changed the standard of music tuning. So classical music, all of the great composers, the music was not, you know, A was 432 hertz. They changed it to 440. And guess what? They never changed it back. And that was we're talking about 1920. You're talking about people that had extreme influence on this planet. And that would be one of, you know, the German government. You had Himmler.
Now we're going off into another.
Yeah,
we're going
What was your question again?
But here it is. You had Himmler,
yeah,
and you had Rockefeller, and you had a scientist that said, okay, we're going to tune music to 440, and 440 hertz is a chaos frequency. 432 hertz is a healing frequency. That's what music was. They changed it. But guess what? They never changed it back. It's still 440 is the standard. So all classical music, everything is, unless people intentionally tune to 432 hertz. So my point is that Anthrax, we weren't even knowing about that. There was no internet then. We didn't, you know, I bet we probably would have tuned to 432, or but tuning down to E flat, that brings you, you know, below 432. So for me, vocally, tuning to E flat is a good place for my voice. It's a good place for a lot of people's voice. A lot of singers sing in that place. But, you know, your voice is a fixed instrument. It's not like, hey, man, I'll just, I'll sing 16 octaves up, you know, it'll be like a harp in a super high position, you know, like with a capo or something. That's not what your voice does. So you have to really tune to the voice. But I never had that with Anthrax. They were never trying to do something to help me. It was actually fight me. They wanted to go again.
But you know, I'm going to say something. Maybe that arguing, maybe all that arguing and all that boom, 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 boom. Usually, great music is created from arguing, right?
There can be some, certain
some chaos in 440, right?
Well, no, not from that, but from the interactions in the band. I mean, you know, look at Fleetwood Mac. I mean, they had some great songs come out of
everything. Yeah.
Jeez.
I'm just saying, Neil. Maybe that was the beauty and the chemistry of the madness, right?
Well, you know, Fleetwood Mac's a better example. I mean, Fleetwood Mac. I mean, look at the songs they wrote.
Yeah,
they had fights and they had breakups.
Rumors. Sleeping with this guy and that guy.
But look at the music that they came up with. I mean, and the success.
Yeah, and look at you. You got Metal Thrashing Man out of it. Go ahead, Alan. Sorry.
Well, I also wrote Armed and Dangerous. That was my idea. You know,
that's my favorite song off that album.
And Gung Ho was my idea.
Let's play 20 questions now. So Neil, we're running out of time, so we're just yes or no answers, and as much as possible. Let's see here. You went to high school with Dan Lilker and Scott Ian?
Yes, I was in a
Okay.
class with Scott.
And did you take
in
him
the
to
first year in the first year of high school.
and you were heavily into the Ramones and the punk movement at that time.
I was I would say I was pretty diverse in what I liked. You know, I was not a prejudiced type of music aficionado. I was, you know, I think in certain places, you know, people are like, you can choose this, but you can't choose that. You can like this band, but you can't like that band. I think there was a lot of that going on. I like punk. You know, I was part of that scene. I mean, I worked at Max's Kansas City and the Ritz when it first opened. You know, I was on the back end of Max's. That was, you know, the older generation than mine. You know, the guys that were 10 years ahead of me were in that gap between, you know, that's where Aerosmith played. I mean, Deborah Harry, you know, she worked there.
Yeah.
Riot.
You know, Lou Reed, Bruce Springsteen. I mean, you're talking about the Heartbreakers, you know, Johnny Thunders. Some amazing bands went through Max's. Madonna was playing there around the same time I was. I think we might have been playing there the same show or the same week, but that's what was going on. And, you know, there was other artists that were, I mean, that's a whole separate topic, but that is punk, you know, and I was part of that. Neon Leon and the Undertones and Von Elmo and Wayne County, Jane County, you know, Wayne County and the Electric Chairs. Check that band out. So, I mean, there were some crazy bands. This band called, the Dead Boys. There was, Pure Hell. It was an all-black band that played, you know, the punk metal kind of stuff. And it was, like, very cool. You know, I loved it. And there was all of these great creative bands. So I was part of that scene. And then later I joined Anthrax. I had my own band, The New Race, you know, so later I joined Anthrax. So it was like...
So, when you were in Anthrax, now when Greg Walls and Greg D'Angelo left, did you really think the band was over when it was just you, Dan and Scott?
Well, first, you know, Greg, I didn't understand that he was going to leave, but the thing that was probably not working in my favor is I thought, you know, what I was told all my life, that everybody should just be nice to each other, everyone can be friends, and, you know, we all should just get along and all that. And, you know, certainly people have different ideas, they have different values, different opinions, etc. And certainly nowadays, it's, you know, you could have disagreements with your friends and family and your coworkers and your, you know, and other people you meet or know. And that could be the end of the friendship or the relationship.
That's the last 5 years.
They have a different opinion. You know, some people just want you to have their opinion. You know, that's the only way they see it. So, yeah, that world was a good world because at least people could have contrasting views and collaborate. But nowadays, it's like, oh, it's you know, oh, it's all one way or the other. It's not collaborative like it was in that respect. And yeah, I think I guess I drove myself off the road here, but you can steer me back on there, Alan.
Well, Neil, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier. It doesn't seem like they were open to your ideas. They were doing their own thing, and you were trying to bring in, like you said, a camaraderie. Let's build a song together, and it's like, just go do your thing, and we'll do our thing. Is that accurate?
Yes, and when I was working on Armed and Dangerous, because Jimmy was asking me a question earlier, like just before we got on the air. Armed and Dangerous was an idea I came up with. You know, I had some influence from martial arts, from some of these magazines that were out there, and I was like looking at different things and learning and educating myself, and you know, over time. And then I was like, okay, this kind of fits into that element. And so the song basically had this ballady intro, right? It was a very melodic ballady kind of intro, and the band themselves, the members of the band were talking to me in the rehearsal studio, well, we want to go hardcore punk. I'm like, I was already part of the punk scene. Like, punk rock was the Ramones, it was the Sex Pistols, it was a Clash, it was Generation X, it was, you know, X from LA, it was, you know, you had punk rock bands, right? There's a lot more names that I can name, you know, that fit into that vibe. And you know, comes from places like the MC5. It comes from, you know, the New York scene. It comes from all of that, from Britain. That's punk rock. So this other thing that was hardcore punk, it wasn't really punk rock, but I do respect it. And then, you know, some of it I do appreciate. It's just that was like, okay, these guys are, you know, they already came up with grilled cheese sandwiches. Now they're calling it something else, and they got some other thing thrown on the sandwich. You know, it's.
So what you're trying to say is you brought a certain level of
I was already in that lane.
Professionalism to the band.
I was in that lane already, but they were talking about being hardcore punk in a rehearsal. I'm like, that's not like arena rock. That's not like Accept or Saxon. That's not, you know, like Riot, you know, which I really love those bands. I mean, they wanted to steer it in, okay, well, let's just, it was just not a very creative direction based on, we're working on Armed and Dangerous. Like, this song is melodic and it's heavy and it's totally not hardcore punk, but that was the weirdness. It was kind of a strange thing, but there was a bunch of them. They were bullying me because they were ganging up. I mean, there's a bunch of them saying, this is what we're doing. Not, do you want to do this, or we want to do this. This is what we're doing. So it was kind of like, that's how it went. You know, this is what we're doing. Well, who's we're? Like we're is not, this is what I'm doing. This is what we're doing. So that's kind of how it went. And, you know, so that's what bullying is. You know, that's what happens. It's a coup. And I'm not trying to get into that conversation, but the point is that as a writer, you know, it was contradictory. It's like they're saying, well, we want to do hardcore punk, but we're writing a ballad with some metal behind it, you know, with a chorus. So it was just, you know, like, go figure it out and then write all of it at home. You know, I was writing it all in my room. So
hindsight being 2020, Neil, would looking back, would you have done things differently? Maybe hung out with Charlie and Scott a little bit more, you know.
That's not an option. That was never an option because they already had fixed, you know, they had agendas and intentions already established. You know, Scott and Charlie would hang out, and of course Frankie lived there, so he's there too. So they would get together and play cards, or they'd play dice, or whatever they do. But they were buddies, you know, and I was an outsider to that. So I don't need to explain further. That you know, and they had a whole bunch of road crew guys. This is something that never gets brought up, but there was a whole bunch of road crew guys, basically these cronies that were all, you know, no matter what the other, you know, member said, that's what these cronies would do. So if they wanted to turn people against the bad guy, you know, oh, he's the bad guy, let's turn you, like, your singer's the bad guy, you know. We don't want him to sing. God forbid that should, you know, sell records, or that anyone should want his photograph or autograph or whatever. It's just, you know, counterproductive, but that's the reality of it. And that's why I think you have, you know, there are some bands out there that they don't want to have a certain person or you know, they want someone that's not going to get too much attention. And I think that's the case. They wanted someone that would take orders. They needed someone that would, you know, be subordinate, and that they could dominate. And that is their personalities, you know. So no matter what's said, what opinions are, their personalities, you know, they want to dominate. And in a band, you know, it's about collaboration and it's about cooperation. And you could have strong personalities. I mean, you know, look at a guy like Steve Jobs, you know, and collaborating with other people.
Neil, we're getting off. Like, let's go back here. Let's go back to where we need to be. Jim Harrison, he's saying, okay, well, that too. Jim Harrison saying, you know, Neil, you know, do you think it's a good idea for John Bush to go out there and play the Anthrax era songs?
I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it's a, you know, I mean,
there's a void, right? There's a void that's not being tackled.
I mean, what is Anthrax doing? Is Anthrax playing those songs? What songs does Anthrax play on tour? Have they ever played John Bush songs without John?
No, somebody had to fill the void.
I mean, you know, from what I've been told or what I've heard, and this is not, you know, my information. This is what, I don't know. This is what, it's the public perception, right? That's what matters. So the public, what I've been told and heard, is that Anthrax is playing pretty much a very similar set list to what they've played for a long time. So, you know, I don't know what they've done for Fistful of Metal. I didn't see them do any kind of, you know, if they're an old school band, I haven't seen them do anything to you know,
To commemorate and celebrate. Right?
Commemoration, no. I mean, you're going to call a video on YouTube something that commemorates it, from lockdown times. I mean, Armed and Dangerous, that was 1985 that came out. This is 40 years. I'm doing Armed and Dangerous shows. I've already done it in Mexico. I'm going to do it in Brazil. I'm playing at Manifesto Rock Bar.
Oh, yes, we didn't say
Sao
that. You're
Paulo.
playing Brazil, yes.
I'm playing in Sao Paulo, Brazil, for the second time that I'm going to Brazil. I've been to Latin America, every year, 2022, 2023, 2024, and now 2025. Been there already, going back to Brazil. And last year, we did Latin America tour, Fistful 40. This year, Armed and Dangerous, Armed 40. So we're also going to Canada, like you said. We're going to be playing in Ottawa. We're going to be playing in Toronto. We're going to be playing in Montreal. I may not have the order correct, right? But you can.
It's okay. We'll figure it out when you get here.
You can mention that, but I think what's significant here is, hey, I mean, we're playing in Brazil, which is a great market for metal. It's a great country. The people are great. The musicians there are fantastic. I have a great, incredible band there, and I want to mention the names of the people.
Not everybody's name, but the band.
Well, I'm going to mention them because they're from different bands. So, but you have, in Canada, you have Drowning in Blood.
Drowning in Blood.
Which is, they're backing me, they're supporting me, and they're working hard on my songs. Great band. So they're playing the songs the way that I present those songs, at the level of intensity, at the arrangements, and also the delivery, which is different than Anthrax. I'm not trying to be Anthrax. I don't want to be Anthrax. In fact, I don't even know that we have much in common in any way, except that we once played together. So, that's the reality of it. But with Brazil, the band just, they nailed it. They learned my material, the way that I deliver it. We worked briefly in person together, but they spent a lot of time on their own, the homework. So in the band, you have Jader Menosi. He comes from Jader Menosi's Interstellar Experience. Quite a prolific guitarist, an amazing artist on his own right. He has a release that came out, Bill Martins. He plays from a band called Hellish War, the bass player. He's also a singer, lead singer. And also Talis Statkevicius. I said his name wrong. Statkevicius. And Talis, he's a guitar player as well. He has a band called Hamataz. He also has a band Worshipper. And these guys are all playing gigs, like they're all very active and recording albums and, videos and then Rafael Gonçalves, he's the drummer. He played in a band called Brave, power metal, and he's a great drummer. And I also have a very dear friend of mine who's playing on the upcoming Fistful of Metal Alive recordings on drums. Yes, and
I know it is.
His name is Alejandre, Ale, you call him? Ale, and I believe his last name is Magno. I hope I got it right. So anyway, Alejandre is, he just played with the singer Roy Khan from Camelot.
Right.
So he just played in Brazil. I mean, Ale is just a phenomenal drummer, and in order to play what I'm doing, it's not quite what Anthrax did. I'm doing things with arrangements, with production, with, we're not putting fancy, explosions like Kiss and light shows and all this. We're putting together the music like pyrotechnics. So the music really, it lifts up. It really does. It moves. It does something. It moves you. Some songs could be very dragging, like Howling Furies. That could be the song Anthrax. That could be, those songs could drag on. Even the song Across the River, that song could be kind of very anticipated, very, kind of dull, humdrum. So I had to go through each one of these songs, pull them apart completely and put them all back together. And through the technology that's available today, you have this technology. I don't know if you've ever heard of a program called Moises, M-O-I-S-E-S, one of the programs out there, which allows you to go back and take the track, the song, and say, what was that bass player playing? What was that rhythm guitar player playing? So we took the songs, broke them all down to try to, put them back together, glue them back together, get the better tempos for these songs so they sound better to me, I'm singing them for a long time, so I know after 40 years what feels better and feels right. And if people don't agree with that, then that's okay. They don't have to. They can re-record the songs if they want. It's free game out there. It's a free world.
Neil, we're almost out of time here. I just want to know one of the things.
You got a parking meter, Alan? What's going on?
Yeah. When people talk about this album, it's how did you get your voice and the screams and those high notes and everything. That's the one thing that nobody talks about, the bass player or the guitars per se. It's all about the vocals, this album.
Thanks for that comment. I mean, I don't know if I completely can agree, because I think all of it is part and parcel of everything. It's everything comprises the bigger picture. But yeah, I guess there's certain things that might stand out to you on guitars or vocals or drums or bass. But I think there was all other things, good and bad. The mix and the where we were at, and we were in a hurry. I had 2 days, a little more than 2 days, 2.5 days to do all the vocals. So
how did you do it? That's the question, Neil. Yeah. How did you do it? It's amazing.
I didn't have a lot of time, and I had to, in those days, it's not simple to go sing an entire song and nail it perfectly, especially being in a real studio for one of the first, times to really be in a great studio. So, the lies that were told by Dan Spitz saying that, I punched in a word 900 times, that's just not even, that's not even from this planet. It's not even of this.
Yeah, you only had 2 days.
Yeah, I didn't have that kind of time. I try to sing certain things that were hard to sing, and maybe I had to go back to a few things that were really hard, and there were a lot of screams. And, of course, the thing to consider is that we were also younger, and we were tuned to A440, so these notes were really high. I'm singing way up there in the top of my range. So, and I would sustain the notes, and I would, so that was, part of it was, when I was born, I guess I came out screaming. What can I say? The doctor slapped me, and I was screaming ever since. And then, my family in New York, we were known to have some agreements and disagreements, and there would be some conversations that got a little heated. So things, I got yelled at, and
you yelled back.
Yeah, so we learned how to make that work for us. But on the album, I would say that what's really interesting, if you really look at the evolution of the songwriting, if you look at the evolution of those demos, and when it got to Fistful of Metal, then you have a lot more screaming. You had a lot more of that element. And that was partially due to the fact that the earlier songs were just immature. They were written immaturely. They were, kind of copycatted from, hey, let's be like Judas Priest or Iron Maiden. That wasn't me, but that's what, what was there before I got to it, and then
influences. Yeah.
I try to, kind of bring it together. Let's collaborate on, because really the best songwriting, in my opinion, at that time, is Jagger Richards and, Tyler Perry and Lennon McCartney. And
Neil.
You could look at AC/DC and Black Sabbath.
I'm going to tell you my favorite songs off this album, and then Alan's going to tell you his, okay? To me, Death Riders, Metal Thrashing Mad, Panic is incredible, Subjugator, Soldiers of Metal. I fell in love with that song first time I heard it. And Death from Above, insane. You want to talk about sustaining those high notes? What are you hitting, like a D or an E? What is that?
It's called a B5, a B6.
B6, there it is. We were all the way up there, man. You're all the way up there.
And it's pretty high. It's not the highest that I could hit, but that was,
to sustain it, though. You were sustaining it. It wasn't just
an
a squeak.
Voice, at that point. And not that I've been trained, but, I had to train myself. Self-taught. And I have, over the years, went to different vocal experts that had different techniques, breathing and but you can also mess up your voice and
absolutely
by too much of that scholastic bullshit.
And I will attest to this. And I've seen Neil live and sing, just a few years back. He can still sing. In fact, he sings better than he does on this album. Neil is also, I'm going to speak for you here, Neil. This is like a young thrashing metal singer, Now Neil has incorporated soul. He's still got that metal screaming demon sound, but he's incorporated soul. And there's just more dimensions to your voice, Neil. You can sing anything. I've heard Neil sing the blues. I've heard Neil sing, Motown. I've heard Neil sing this stuff. So I can attest he can do pretty much everything. He's actually a better singer today than he was back then.
Well, it's all what fits. It's like sometimes you do what's appropriate for the occasion. And, for metal, some of that soulfulness, it doesn't really fit. It doesn't, and in R&B, doing the metal stuff doesn't really fit either. So you have to kind of gauge what you can pull from, it's having another tool in your toolkit. It's just another, like an in-between screwdriver, an in-between wrench, just having tools that will actually help you get the job done efficiently. And having that, I think, is a very great benefit to, sometimes, just look at Riot, for example. I mean, Guy Speranza and Rhett Forrest are two different types of singers, but Rhett made it work, and he's very soulful, very Paul Rogers-esque. He had the Thin Lizzy, the Paul Rogers, he had the rock, vibe, and Guy Speranza, I would say, a little bit more of a metal singer, even though Rhett can be a metal singer too. It's just, two different styles within the same band. And I think that's what you have with Anthrax. Okay, so that's what is Anthrax. John Bush era, he's got his own delivery, his own sound, and also the music behind that, has a certain cadence, timbre, vibe, flow, all of that. And I think for Joey, the same thing. You have, to me, it's kind of almost like a cartoon character when Joey's singing. It's just, should I start?
Well, not go there.
Telling jokes.
Neil,
I don't
Neil,
know.
this is the last question because I know Alan. He told me he had 45 minutes, and we're way over that. Last question. I love the John Bush era Anthrax. I love the Neil Turbin era. If John Bush calls you up and says, Neil, we got to do this sort of Bush Turbin tour. I mean, would you? To me, I would love this. Like, hands down, this is my favorite era. Is John, and nothing against Joey Belladonna. I still like that era too. Don't get me wrong, but my favorites are the Turbin. My second favorite is John Bush. Would you do a tour like this?
Well, I love John Bush. I'd work with John any day. I mean, he's just a great human being and a great singer, and obviously successful. Doesn't need me around, but all I could say is that we've talked about the possibility. I've interviewed him a few times. I mean, we've been in person numerous times, and we've discussed it briefly. Like, hey, it would be kind of a cool idea. When there was a conversation about, I guess, Anthrax maybe doing something, excuse me, and that was an idea. It was, it wasn't my idea, but it's like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, it's an obvious, it's one of those obvious things, that it's right in front of you. Like, yeah, I mean, Halloween, I mean, they're very shrewd business people. I mean, they have quite a smart approach. I think Michael Schenker, very smart approach. There's other bands that approach things that way. As a team, as a family, they embrace, all of their family, but there's bands that don't. And certainly Anthrax, I'm not just friendly with John Bush, and John's always cool, always very cordial, always very, awesome. But also, Dan Nelson I'm friendly with. Dan Nelson reached out to me not too long ago just to say hi. And, I mean, he's kind of not out there too much, but that was really cool. And, we've spoken before in person and online. And, I mean, also a nice guy, I don't.
So you do it. So you would do it if they called you up.
I don't think that the issue is necessarily that all singers are bad guys, according to that band. But, that's the way they'd have you think, that every singer's got lead singer's disease and they're all messed up. Well, it's easy to, gaslight and blame shift when you're a bully, because that's what bullies do. And I'm not, I don't want a pat on the back. I don't care about glory. I don't care about acknowledgement and recognition and all that. I just want to make great music. I want to work with good people. And, John Bush is good people, so I'd work with him any day. I wouldn't want to work with people that are not good people or people that are, that are manipulators or bullies, and
So let's get those.
especially a group in a room where you just don't have, people think, oh, it's one person. No, no. You ever see the movie The Lost Boys?
Oh,
Yeah.
great movie.
Yeah, and you got, and my friend Corey Feldman's in that movie, right? So you have these vampires, right? And they congregate, like they kind of leech off of one another. Like one of them has got a neck and blood coming out of it. The other one wants that too. They want to kind of leech off of one another. That's what you had. You had these bullies that were kind of leeching, like they kind of work off of one another. Like one of them is a lead vampire, and the other one's kind
We
of
must feed.
work
I remember
off
that
the
line.
other.
We must feed.
And you know what? What's ironic to me about Anthrax is, John Bush does not. He's not one of them. He's not a vampire. He's not
Not a vampire.
He's a good guy. He's very
he's a good
very
guy.
smart businessman, but he's also not one of. He's not one of them. Neither is Dan Nelson, from my experience. And I don't know Dan all that well, but I've talked with him. He seemed very genuine to me. He's very kind. And I met him when I went to see Frankie Bello, who was playing at Sam Ash. So I went to a clinic and I just said hi to Frankie because he was in my neighborhood. I said, hey, I don't have a beef with Frankie. Let me just say hi to him. So I was there, and they kind of like noticed me, but they were doing their thing, and I didn't know Dan Nelson. But afterwards, we were talking, and that's before they opened up for Iron Maiden, I guess, at the Irvine Meadows for the amphitheater, whatever whatever they named it, whatever corporate sponsor, and before they tore it down, turned it into home condos or whatever. So John Bush, yeah, I'd love to do something with John like that. I mean, I think what he's doing now is he's doing Category 7 shows. I mean, that's his band,
Yeah,
right?
there's actually opening for.
He has a brand new album. So I think it's Category 7. I think Metal Blade has an album, Category 7. And so I think that's kind of the idea for that. I mean, if I was approached about it, sure, that'd be an interesting idea. As a fan, would I be interested to see two different eras of Anthrax as a fan? What do you think?
That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm
is that
asking.
something-
He's asking.
I don't think that's a question.
Jimmy's
I think
he's all in.
That's
He's
the
all
way
in.
I am. That's the
I
way
think
I
that's
am.
a question for everybody that's out there watching and listening and knowing is that something
Answer
you
in
want
the
to buy a
comments.
ticket for? Would you be interested to, buy a ticket to go see two eras of Anthrax, which apparently, I don't know. I mean, fans of Anthrax that are current fans, they said that, I mean, what I'm seeing of people that are fans of Joey and people that are fans of John Bush, and I haven't been in the band for a while, so I'm not even talking about necessarily people that comment on anything about me, but it's like what I've been made aware of is that, they're playing similar songs for quite a long time. I mean, Bring the Noise and Antisocial, right? And I mean, that's
Trust.
Public Enemy and Trust, right? But it's not, I don't know, that's their sound.
Turn it up.
And they play later albums, right? They play mostly.
And you know what? And it's fair enough. We got to say it
That's what they
because
do.
that's his era, right? That's Belladonna's era. So he's going to play his era. I say that's fair
It's
enough.
all
But
understandable.
but
Let's
for
let's
us
Neil's-
as fans,
I don't see Joey. I mean, Joey did a song. I think Bush did a song with Joey. One.
but by the way, Paul Di'Anno and Blaze Bayley toured together.
Well,
And they
yeah,
had
that's-
two different
I played-
eras.
And I
right?
played with both of them.
Yeah, but I mean, Di'Anno and
They're great people.
and Blaze, they did a lot of dates together. I think they did some in Russia, they did some in Europe. They played together. I mean, until things sort of dissolved. But my point is, they did play together, and it was two different eras, and it was very successful.
And
So
guess
let's-
what? That's what smart. That's what wise business people do. They both have commonalities. There's
They're
both.
thinking for the fans. They're thinking of the fans, Neil.
Yeah, that too. It's like the fans are what count, and that is the public perception. And I mean, Di'Anno and Blaze. I mean, it would be like this. Okay, this is not a real time scenario, but imagine this. Imagine if Ripper left Priest after his era of Priest,
Yep.
and let's say Halford didn't come back, and they got someone else. So then you would have had Ripper. Tim, who's a great guy too. And you'd have Halford, who's also, much admiration for Halford. He's always carried himself very professionally, very, with high integrity, above all of the singing and, whatever you read in the media. Always, I met him once, very, very, very friendly, very cool, and that's the way he came across. So Halford, imagine Ripper and Halford tour. It could have happened if the timing would have been, because Halford had a solo band.
What about Al Atkins? Al Atkins.
Well, yeah, that's another component to that. But Al Atkins is kind of like Dave Evans. It's like so early on.
Yes, so early on it didn't really count.
There's not recordings. I mean, there's not an album with Al Atkins, is there?
Or Paul Day.
Paul Day. Paul Marriott.
Let's get Neil's
album of
Neil.
Neil, we got all his dates.
Let's get all the dates.
Let's review all this.
Let's summarize this. I know we're way over.
Yeah, so like Dave Evans, he had like a couple of singles or something, or a single or two with AC/DC. So it's kind of like it wasn't really an album. In my case, it wasn't just an album. It was like an EP with my songs, and then they put out
right here.
And they put out Armed and Dangerous with two of my songs on it, and then you have Spreading the Disease, but that's also the main songs or my songs that are some of the most popular songs.
So
I mean, these are the songs that ended up, on other albums. Like there's probably been about, compilations and special editions and all this. There's probably like, maybe 30 different versions of these things.
When are you doing South America again, Neil?
Yeah, so I'm going to, I had a tour that was scheduled to hit in Argentina and also in Bolivia, but due to the booking agent making arrangements and so forth with the bands and so forth, I mean, it had to get postponed. So I was really looking forward to it. And, the bands are working hard. And I was really looking forward also, not just Argentina, but also going to Bolivia, because I have a great promoter there that I was working with. And, we were ready to do these shows, but that unfortunately had to be postponed. However, I do have a amazing venue in Sao Paulo called Manifesto Rock Bar or Manifesto Bar, and you should check that place out. That's I just saw Marduk is playing there, and this is the place that Udo and Ripper played when I was playing up the street at Jai Club, but this is an even better place. So for me, it's like I'm very excited to have the opportunity, and I look forward to that opportunity in September, and then of course in October, equally amazing places in Canada. You've got
there we go.
I'm trying to remember all the names. You've got Brass Monkey.
The Brass Monkey.
Oh, they're going to be open.
Ottawa.
They're closed right now. I hope
you've got the Rock Pile.
The Rock Pile, yes.
Yeah,
great place.
And then you've got Piranha Bar in Montreal.
Yeah.
So
we know where that is.
Piranha Pit Fest. I mean, hey, it doesn't have to be the Pit Fest. We're gonna
do the Thrash Fest with Neil Turbin, the Fistful Fest.
And there won't be any sleepy time. There's no sleepy heads at my music. There's no time for popcorn and bathroom breaks.
You've played there before, evidently.
Well,
I think he played Cafe Compass. That's where he played.
I'm just saying, Piranha, that's the way they operate there.
Yeah. I mean, I remember last time I was in Montreal. It was a great show, and the people loved it, and I loved it, and that was my favorite show of the tour, actually.
You know what? He played at the Spectrum, Alan. He played at the Spectrum with
the Spectrum's gone. It's a bunch of condos now. So
yeah.
All right, Neil. Always a pleasure, and I'm glad. We can't wait to see you when you get into town. We'll take you out for smoked meat, Montreal's famous smoked meat sandwich.
So there was one question that you didn't ask me.
We asked you everything.
Yes.
Go ahead. What is it?
You never asked me. And this might be a sensitive question.
Ooh.
But you never asked me about Billy Milano.
We'll have to save that when you're in Montreal. We'll go through that in Montreal.
Yeah, we'll do it in Montreal.
I'll just make one comment.
Okay, quick.
I'll say this. I think that Billy Milano is, I think he's an excellent artist. I mean, he certainly brought his own flavor of like something that, he did the SOD, Stormtroopers of Death, and also MOD. And, Billy speaks his mind, right? He doesn't hold back. He's got no filter, right? But I don't agree with what he said about John Bush, because I think what happened is maybe whatever happened to Billy, he was working with his band, with SOD or MOD or, with the members of Anthrax or ex-members, and maybe at the time John Bush might have been in Anthrax at the time, so maybe that was like kind of like, oh, he's an Anthrax.
I think he was, yeah.
But I think that John Bush as a person, as a human, as a band member, I mean, the guy is just amazing. He's a good guy, and he gave me a lot of trust. I just recently sang with John Bush. I mean, I've worked with John Bush already, not just interviews, but I sang with him. We did Long Live Rock and Roll at the
Viewfest,
Ronnie. So I mean, how cool is that John, on the fly, John said, "Sure, let's do it." I said, "Hey, I have an idea. How do I back you up?" And I wasn't looking to, showboat. I wasn't trying to, get in his way or anything like that. And that's exactly, how I would approach a gig that was like that. I mean, it's not about me. This is John's song. So he invited me to participate in that. Yep. So, yeah, I think that, John is a fantastic guy. I think Billy Milano would love John Bush if he actually got to sit down and talk to him.
I agree with you.
But you can't fault Billy for speaking his mind. You can't, nobody had to put words in his mouth. He's telling you what he feels. So, and what's really tough in this world, the truth is something that is really hard for people to swallow. Like, they don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear what they want to hear. But when I heard come from Billy, I'm like, well,
So, and for those of you who don't know what's going on. I didn't
ask that question, Neil. There's a reason why I didn't ask that question, because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, he didn't.
And I was going to summarize. Billy Milano did this really raw and unedited sort of interview on YouTube, kind of going at it at Anthrax. And so that's just the high level right there.
I talked to a member someone that knows Billy really well, and that was in, one of the bands or played with him on a recording or something. And I'm not exactly sure of the whole history, but he was kind of surprised. He said, yeah, so that conversation was brought up by that person. And I was like, wow, really? So I guess people are kind of off put by it, but that's what happens when you have something like a WikiLeaks. You speak, you uncover stuff, or there's truth being told. Like, oh my God, we can't know the truth. God forbid we should know what the real truth is, because
the truth will set you free, Neil. I gotta go, and thank you. We're looking forward to seeing you, and we can't have you here in Montreal. It'll be as great as the show.
I can't wait to come there and see you guys. We can go have some.
Definitely. We're going to go have dinner. We're going to definitely have dinner. We're going to get some bagels. We're going to have some smoked meat. What do they call that beer
that you guys have over there? Not just Molson or Moosehead or something, but I'm talking about that fondue, the Dave Mustaine beer, that company that.
Oh, yeah. We have the Dave Mustaine beer. What's it called again?
Chambly.
It's got a French name.
Unibrew.
We have a lot of microbreweries here. Yeah.
So
Whatever you want, Neil. Supper's on us.
What's the traditional drink over there? The beer. Like, what do you guys drink? Not what everybody else gets imported.
It has to be wet. That's all. That's the only rule.
Wet is good.
Wet is good.
But what beer is it? What beer do you get?
Don't worry. We'll set you up. We'll set you with
What do you guys drink over in Canada?
I just drink water. They go, what do you have?
I'll help
Neil,
you.
Neil, we're going to get you the banquet.
It'll be experience.
The whole choice of Montreal. Don't you worry about it. Everything's.
But they don't import anything anymore from the U.S., right?
No. You guys, we don't buy your whiskey anymore.
These are over.
You don't buy our stuff. We don't buy your stuff. It's a disaster.
All right, Neil.
Can you guys get something from Europe? Are they allowed to?
Sure, of course we can.
We get
Or, so you guys can have
Australian wine.
Crepes.
No more California ride. You're right.
Nothing from the U.S.
Poutine and crepes. All right, buddy.
We love you guys. Thanks so much, and come
you're the best.
Thank you for all your hard work.
And come see us in Brazil.
There you go, Brazil and Canada. Neil Turbin.
And there might have been a question from the fans that you didn't ask. I mean,
oh God, there's so many.
We gotta go,
Neil.
How about just one small one, one tiny?
Neil. We're gonna interview you here too. Don't worry about it. We're gonna go through everything. We're all good.
One question. Come on, guys.
Okay.
Can't I just have one more?
Great. Thanks, Neil.